London is in a constant state of construction.
London's just in a constant state. I'm in a state.
Constant state of disarray. I sound really pronounced speech impediment
No,
right
you
now.
don't. You sound totally normal.
Oh, do I? It's
Yeah, you
just
sound
with
normal.
these on, I can't hear it. Anyway, welcome to another episode. If you're wondering what we're doing here, we are actually podcasting. So welcome to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong, a podcast where we talk about anything and everything, sometimes nothing. And we are two exes who are really good friends. Some would say best friends. Some would say just good friends. And that's Josh over there, and I'm Sean. How are you doing, Josh?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sean. Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I just can't get over how I sound as soon as I put the headphones on. It's like I'm in my head.
But I have that. I mean, I'm not wearing dentures, and I notice the difference in my voice because because your ears are covered, you can just hear it sort of reverberating around your jawbones.
And spoiler alert,
that's the technical term.
If you haven't watched the previous episode, yes, I have dentures.
Sean's recently gotten dentures.
I think maybe I need to start calling them like partial dentures, because I think when I tell people dentures, they think that I can take all my teeth out. And but it's not that impressive. It's not that impressive.
If you haven't already, I highly recommend clicking on the link in the show notes from last week's episode with the video of the dog wearing the dentures, because it is highly amusing to me. But speaking of dentures, I went to the dentist yesterday, and it was a new dentist in a nearby suburb, and it was fine. It was a perfectly pleasant experience. I don't get nervous at the dentist or anything like that, but it was a bit weird. Like at first, she sort of welcomed me in and sat me down, and we did the pre-examination chit chat, and it just kind of went on, and I was a bit like, I just want you to look at my teeth and tell me if they're okay.
What was she asking?
What do you do, and asking questions about like my work and about my music and blah blah blah.
She's not charging by the hour, is she?
No, but there was a sales pitch later on, so I think it was all just part of that. It was all like, have you thought about? Because I mean, this is really boring for you and our listeners, but I had braces when I was, I don't know, a teenager, not even a teenager. Maybe I was like 11 or 12. I had braces, and my teeth are quite straight, and they've stayed straight. But she said, "Oh, do you not wear a retainer?" And I said, "No, not since I stopped wearing braces when I was, that was 30-something years ago." And she said, "Oh, we recommend you do wear a retainer for the rest of your life." And I said, "Oh, well, I've never, but my teeth haven't shifted. They're still really straight." And she said, "Yeah, but as you get older." And I thought, on the spot, oh, this is just a sales pitch. But when I got home, I looked it up, and apparently it's true. Like they do recommend wearing a retainer, not every night, but maybe a couple of nights a week.
So what? When you sleep, you put it in.
Yeah.
And what does it do?
It stops your teeth shifting, because I had several teeth removed for the braces to do their thing. She said it's quite likely that there'll be some movement of my teeth. Anyway, sorry, This is really dull.
Well, it's
content.
Not. It is the sort of content that we have to talk about at our age. I didn't know that. Well, I do. I understand the concept of teeth shifting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have gaps where teeth have been removed, other teeth will just migrate.
Mm-hmm.
But
migration, yeah, exactly. That's the term she used, migration.
I wouldn't think that teeth migration would be that drastic that you needed to like cut it off at the pass. Like you have to, and like when you're sleeping, is that the only time they move? Because you're awake more than you're asleep.
When you're not paying attention at night, they'll start migrating to another continent in the night.
Like this, but like what? But surely your teeth are moving when you're awake.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, I researched it, and by research I mean I asked ChatGPT.
See if you can surprise your teeth one night, like pretend to be asleep, and then suddenly go like that, and your teeth will be all like
sleep with a mirror like right in front of my face, so I can just like wake up and go,
just like
checking.
When when you're a kid and you try and see if you can see inside the fridge when the light doesn't come on.
Yeah.
See if you can do that with your teeth and see what they're doing.
Yeah,
they'll be all over the place. Some will be like lying
they'll be
down.
missing. They'll have gone on holiday.
Yeah,
Anyway, so
I wouldn't think. Yeah, because you're only asleep for like what 8 hours tops, right?
if you're
So
lucky,
then you're awake for 16 hours.
I don't. I think the idea is you do wear them a minimum 2 nights a week,
Yeah.
just to stop them migrating. So yeah, that's my dental migration
Right.
dilemma. But of course, it comes at a cost. I think they're about £100 for each retainer. So
Yeah, and then if your teeth continue to migrate, like, do you have to get a new retainer like every 2 years or
well, no,
something?
the idea is with the retainer, it stops them from moving. So I don't know. Anyway, let's get on with the episode because
This is
I
the
think it's
episode. This
there's
is
got to,
the.
there's got to be more than dental migration.
There's more to life than dental migration. Did you tell her that? Did you shake her and say,
I should have.
enough with this? It's like that episode of The Simpsons where they're talking about. I think Lenny is talking to Homer about you shouldn't eat eggs or eggs are bad for cholesterol or.
Okay,
And
I
then
don't know if
and
I've
then they
seen that
and
one.
then they say, "Oh, did Big Egg get to you too?" And then there's this person in an egg suit
Right.
hiding from behind the corner, and
Yeah.
Homer chases them and says, "You better run, Egg."
Uh huh.
Do you remember that?
No, I
So
remember the
maybe
better
she
you
would.
better run egg line, but I don't remember the rest of the episode.
Maybe this
Maybe
dentist was in the pocket of
big tooth,
big tooth, big migration.
big tooth. Do you remember? It makes me think of that dental practice in Mexico City, and the office was sort of shaped a bit like a tooth. It
Yeah,
was
it was in
very,
Condesa.
yeah. It was on one of the parks, wasn't it? On the edge of one of the parks.
Yeah, like
Makes me think of that.
Parque Mexico. But
Mm.
what, like when you're young, I mean, obviously, like you get braces, you think about braces, but there's a whole period of your life where you don't really think about your teeth too much. You normally go when there's an emergency, but there's a lot of upkeep. Like here, all this time we've dedicated talking to teeth migration, but you
Uh-huh.
just wouldn't think about that for like a good 30 years of your life. And then suddenly your like teeth are dropping out of your head and marching off in the middle of the night. And you're
Yeah,
like, oh shit, I better start
yeah.
paying attention to my teeth. And then it's kind of too late for some stuff.
But because I suppose if you went back 100 years or something, our life expectancy would have been so much less. It's quite a modern phenomenon, isn't it? The longer our lives become, on average, the more maintenance and upkeep there is of all parts of our body. Eyesight, teeth,
Yeah.
hearing.
Hmm.
Everything. Um,
I have to go to the dentist on Saturday
mm,
because a while back I had some teeth extractions. They weren't migrating of their own free will. They were forcibly
they were,
relocated
uh-huh,
out of my skull.
they were processed offshore.
They were sent to offshore detention.
We
And
shouldn't joke about such a horrible subject, but yeah, anyway.
um, anyway, in the process of getting these dentures, I had X-rays taken, and they said, "Oh, when we took your teeth out or your fragments out or whatever they were, there was some little bits left in, and
Mm.
it's in 4 spots here, 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 and here, and in each of those 4 spots they didn't get it all." And I'm like, "How does that happen?" Like, it's
Don't they
anyway.
just pull the tooth and it all
Well,
comes
no,
out?
because it was in because some were broken.
Okay.
Anyway, so they said
Sounds.
you need to go and have like day surgery where they're going to cut my gums open and pull out these fragments. And
I think we're going to have a content warning on this episode.
but I'm like terrified of it. Like I hate anything like needles, surgery, teeth stuff, anything like that. I hate the feeling of it. I hate the
Mm.
thought of it. The process of it scares me. And now I have to go and they're like, oh, they'll probably have to make a small incision in your gum, but it's like in 4 spots. Ugh.
Yeah,
That's
sounds
on
horrible.
Saturday. It's in over your side of town. It's like on the North End Road, which is
Okay.
well, not really your part of town, but closer to you than where I am. So you might hear me screaming
Uh huh.
from Ham.
Um, Yeah, I was going to say something, but maybe not appropriate for the podcast. So, um, yeah. So Saturday, I'll be at work, so I won't be able to hear your screams.
Yeah.
And I was going to say there was, I'll say it anyway. When I remember when I was in Mexico City and I went to get my teeth cleaned once,
Yeah.
and it was a dentist I'd never been to. I think it was maybe recommended by Carlos, our friend there, and I went, and because I hadn't been there before, I had to fill in this new patient registration form, and it was asking about my sexual orientation, and I was really just like a bit baffled and confused about
Yeah.
why. And I remember I was messaging Carlos, and I was saying, "Is that normal that they would ask that?" And he was like, "No, not really." And I was like, "It's very peculiar to me why they would be asking about that." And he made a funny joke, which maybe is a bit too risque for the podcast, but yeah.
But what could I can't understand what the joke could even
Well,
be.
it was about about how able you are to open your mouth and stuff like that.
Oh
So
my god.
yeah. So
Anyway, when I was a teenager and I went and had a tooth extracted in Australia, and it was around, it would have been in the 90s,
hmm
the early 90s, maybe. So there was a lot of HIV and AIDS hysteria and like misinformation, even within the medical communities. And I
hmm
can remember the dentist on the checklist, the form I had to fill out. It was asking me not only was I homosexual, but like, did I have like anal intercourse?
really on
And
a dental check-in.
yeah, because they
Wow.
wanted to know whether you were high risk of HIV.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like, well, what are they going to do
They double
if,
glove when they have patients with a higher risk of bloodborne infection, but mostly
would
HIV. They
that,
double
does
glove.
that do something?
Probably
Like,
not. Probably not. I mean, you're not likely to be able to contract HIV, by performing surgery on someone unless you're doing it like bare hands,
yeah,
whatever.
but I
But
mean, if you get like a needle jab, is probably the most, you know, like,
yeah,
so.
but
But
even then, I think
how
that
would
was
a
a lot of
needle going through one glove not be able to go through two gloves? Like
yeah.
the
I
force
just
that would
know
be
when
in.
I worked in my brief stint as an assistant nurse, and I say assistant nurse in inverted commas because I had no training. Um, at a cosmetic surgery clinic in London, we would double glove when because we had sex workers come in sometimes, and anyone who was a high risk, or they say anyone, it's just sex workers were the only ones that I knowingly assisted with, and yeah, we would have to double glove for that.
And
But
how would you
yeah,
know someone was a sex worker?
well, I mean, I suppose if they self-declare,
And that's the thing, right? Like in this dentist, when I was a teenager, I wrote, yeah, I've had sex with men. Like, I was like, I'm not going to be like shamed into saying that I'm not gay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there should.
And also, I suppose there's an element of when you're asked to fill out something that looks semi official, like paperwork, you feel like you should be truthful, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
like, yeah, what if for some reason they need to know whether I've been anally penetrated?
But then there was that. Do you remember that other time when we had a friend in hospital in Mexico and we were asked to donate blood? So just to explain that to people outside of Mexico, in Mexico, if you're in hospital and you need blood, if you need, I don't know, I don't. Despite my assistant nurse qualification or lack of, I don't really know. But if you need blood in hospital, you have to get friends or family members to come in and donate blood. Not that their blood will be given to you, but you have to get a certain amount of blood donated to the sort of the hospital blood bank in order to be able to access it yourself. So, but I remember being told, don't tell them you're gay when you go to donate blood because they might not accept it. So,
Well, that was it in Australia and the UK for a long time? The blood banks wouldn't accept blood
yeah,
from
from
like,
gay men,
well, or men who
well,
have
men who had
sex
sex
with,
with men. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's changed now, right?
Um, no, it's Well, yes, it has changed, but they now, I think the Red Cross in the UK, at least, the Red Cross says you can have you can donate blood if you have protected sex with men, not if you have unprotected
If
sex.
you double
But
glove.
but of course, a lot of gay men or men who have sex with men in the UK or other parts of the world as well now have unprotected sex because they use PrEP, which prevents the transmission of HIV. So
But is that considered a form of protected sex
I
or
don't think
safer
so.
sex?
I don't think so. I
Because
think I looked recently at the Red Cross website, and I think it did actually mention using a physical, like a condom.
should we explain to people what PrEP is?
Sure.
I mean, there might be people watching this who don't know what PrEP is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually very commonly known and understood within the gay community, but outside of the gay community, there's quite a lack of understanding, as
But
you
I
and I
think
have.
even within the queer or the gay community, I think that people know that it's available and what it does roughly, but they don't have a deep understanding of what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So PrEP is
So
a
PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. Yeah.
yeah.
And what does it do to the body?
So it stops the transmission of HIV. So it's a form of antiviral medication, and if it's taken daily, it prevents the transmission of HIV.
I I think you're getting a bit confused
What do you
by
mean?
well, it doesn't. Well, first of all, it doesn't stop it. It decreases the risk.
Effectively, though, I mean, it's 99 point
No, 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 no.
something.
It's not that high.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm gonna. This is the one time where I
Well,
need to Google because we need to be not spreading.
welcome back to Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong podcast, which is often unresearched and should not be relied upon as fact. But my understanding was it almost eliminated completely the risk of HIV transmission. And whether if both people were taking it who are having sex or even if just one of them was taking it. But Sean is doing some live research now, so he can fill us in on the facts.
Okay. Well, now I've got to make sure that I get the information from the correct spot as well. Like I don't just go to the first link.
Right.
Um,
True groundbreaking research happening. While Sean's doing that, though, I'll continue in my semi-informed understanding of PrEP. So it basically acts as an antiviral drug at the point of contact where if you have HIV or if you're having sex with somebody who has HIV, it can dramatically reduce the risk of transmission if you have unprotected sex.
but it's really for the person who is HIV negative, the benefits, right? Isn't there another drug that like anti what do you call it? If somebody is HIV positive, they take something else that stops them from being
Well,
transmissible. They
I,
don't
bel
take PrEP for
I,
that.
bel well, I believe that if somebody has HIV and they're undergoing treatment for HIV, it can reduce their cell count so much so that they are not, undetectable and therefore unable to transmit HIV. Whether or not they take PrEP as well, I don't know. I don't know if that's not something I know too much about.
Okay, so because I think PrEP is only marketed and given to people who are negative.
Okay.
So on the Terence Higgins Trust website, which we're doing a deep dive into queer sexual health here.
Mm-hmm.
PrEP is a drug taken by HIV negative people
Okay.
before and after sex that reduces the risk of getting HIV. There's a whole different category of drugs that positive people take to make them not transmissible, the virus untransmissible. And taking PrEP before being exposed to HIV means there's enough drug inside you to block HIV if it gets into your body. And I mean, there's a some people might hear of it called Truvada,
Hmm.
Like that's how it's referred to in the market.
Well, that's a brand name in the US, particularly, isn't it?
Yeah. Um, but there's another second pill has been approved for use as PrEP, the branded drug Descovy, or its generic equivalent. But so I mean, if anyone's listening and they want to go and get PrEP, you go and talk to your go. It's usually better to go to a sexual health clinic that specializes in helping
Hmm.
queer people or men who have sex with men.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a tablet that's usually if you have unprotected sex, you take the pill daily,
Hmm.
but you can also take it when needed.
Yeah.
So if you take it 2 tablets 24 hours before you plan to have sex, and then 1 tablet 24 hours after, and then a further tablet 48 hours after that. I mean, that feels like a lot of
Hmm.
like,
It's a lot of alarms on your phone, a lot of reminders on your phone. But that's yeah, they call that prep on demand.
yeah,
If you
on
don't
on demand.
if you don't have penetrative sex regularly. Um,
Yeah, because it's unclear if there are long-term health side effects, and so for some people, can't take prep all the time because of other comorbidities or issues they have with their
or
kidneys
medications
or
they're on or something. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm not. I probably won't do a deep dive now into that about the effectiveness, but I know that I don't think it's as high as 99.9.
No.
It might be up high, it might be in the
Okay.
90s, but also because there are health professionals that recommend you also use um, condoms
Condoms. Yeah.
in conjunction with it.
Mm.
But a lot of people don't want to do that, and
Yeah.
there's a real obsession with condomless sex, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, I
You
think a
know,
lot of that's from porn, isn't it? Porn has really, and there's that whole uh, fetish. I don't know. Fetish is maybe giving it too nice a title, but there's that whole movement of stealthing, and that's where you tell somebody you're going to use a condom during sex, and then once the sex has begun, you stealthily remove the condom. So that's obviously a very very um, problematic thing to do without the other person's knowledge.
yeah, well, in the UK, that's considered
Considered rape, I
rape.
believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I think recently someone was
Hmm.
prosecuted for doing that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I also find like when we were younger, people talked a lot about condoms, and it was considered just very very rare. Obviously, I mean, people would still have sex without condoms, but the idea that you would publicly say that was very taboo, right?
What
Like it,
that you would say that you do have
you
sex
do
with
have sex without
condoms
condoms. Yeah,
or
it would
without?
be yeah without. It was
Oh, right.
considered taboo.
Are you
But
talking about within like men who have sex with men, or are you just talking
yes,
about in
yeah,
general?
you're talking
Okay.
about like gay bows,
Right.
but like now it's almost like when I talk to young people, and I don't talk to many young people, but it's almost like a rarity to find somebody who uses condoms
Oh, yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
all on prep.
Yeah.
But then there's this danger of all this concern that people get socialized into not using condoms,
Yeah.
and then they stop taking prep for whatever number of reasons, like they can't afford it anymore, or it stops becoming available in their area for free, or they just
Or just
forget, they get
complacency, or
complacency.
they just believe, well, if everyone else is taking their prep, then I'm fine because they'll
Yeah,
be protected from HIV
yeah,
transmission.
it's, and
So,
it's and it's similar to the way people used to think. Oh well, if somebody is HIV positive, I'll be able to tell, or they'll tell me. You
right,
know,
right.
and so people are becoming, complacent around safer sex
Mm,
practices that
mm,
like a generation ago, we just took it for granted that you would tell everyone to always wear a condom.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, like I know people in their 20s and even 30s who are like, oh yeah, like I would never use a condom. Like I've never bought a condom.
But not
Uh,
using prep, or
well, maybe a combination.
okay.
But because it's condoms have fallen out of that mainstream
Mm,
queer discourse so much,
Yeah.
That you used to go into gay bars,
I
and
was just going to say that.
there'd be
Yeah.
posters, or there'd be baskets of condoms and lube
Yeah,
given
I was just going to
away.
say, like, there'd be like big containers full of condoms and lube on the bar of every,
Yeah, and
gay pub, gay
people would,
club.
activists would be in there like trying to talk to people or hand out condoms. I mean, there
Yeah,
aren't people walking around with baskets full of prep, handing them out like
no,
candy. We
no,
don't have that same thing, and like it's really, I think there could be an issue with, like, I wonder if if we looked at the statistics of people um, being diagnosed with HIV in countries where PrEP is prevalent. I wonder if
mm.
you will see an upswing in cases.
Yeah. Well, let's not speculate on here, but I'd hope not. But yeah, you do that. There is a concern, a genuine concern, I suppose. That
And also, like, condoms are not 100% safe either, such as PrEP isn't either.
mm,
But condoms also add a layer of protection to other sexually transmitted infections.
that's true. Yeah.
And so there surely has to be, I will speculate here, there has to be an uptick in the number of sexually transmitted
Like
infections.
non-HIV
Yeah.
STIs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
probably
gonorrhea
gonorrhea,
and
chlamydia.
chlamydia. Like, since a lot more young men and young people are not using condoms
Mm,
as
yeah, true.
regularly, there must be other.
Hepatitis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, anyway, don't trust anything we've said on this podcast. Do your own research,
Yeah,
and
and if you want a little bit more information, go to the Terence Higgins Trust website,
mhm.
where there is a lot of really good information about all sorts of sexual health concerns for queer people, but primarily in this conversation, we're talking about PrEP. So go
Mhm.
and investigate that. And if you want to know a little bit more about the drugs used to treat people living with HIV, or to treat that condition and to make them untransmissible,
Mhm.
you can find that information on Terence Higgins Tract. It's really interesting. It's really interesting what these drugs do to the body
Mhm.
to either stop the transmission. Um, like, it's just fascinating to me. And you think of how many people like have died and continue to die without access to these drugs, either
Mhm.
historically or now, you know, unjustly, in countries where it's not made available or it's
Yeah,
unaffordable.
yeah.
It's really sad. I mean, how many? Do you know how many people have died as a result of HIV infection in history?
Everywhere in the world?
Yeah, like
No, no
globally.
idea. No idea. I
I
mean,
mean,
millions.
I think it's maybe between 40 and 50 million.
Could well be.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
um, anyway, what about moving on to the news, the sad news of David Lynch passing away?
Yeah, I know. I know. It came out of the blue. I was very nostalgic. I won't say I was very sad. I didn't know him, obviously, but I was a huge fan of Twin Peaks. It was the sort of defining thing of my early teens. Um, yeah, how was it for you? How
You
did you
must have been
react?
very young, because that came out in 1990,
Yeah,
the
so I was
first version.
yeah, I was about 13, I think. Um, it
Well,
was incredible. Yeah.
yeah, hearing about David Lynch die is sad to me. He's somebody that I admired his art. I found him a very interesting character. I felt he added color, or like energy, to the world. He felt like a nice person to have in the world. And of
Hmm.
course, I don't know that he was a completely nice person. I mean, I don't know him personally.
Yeah.
So I'm always quite mindful of like singing the praises of celebrities, because we don't know if they were truly nice people, or we just perceive them to be that way. But
Yeah.
for all of the purposes of this discussion, he seemed like a genuinely admired and loved person, not by only the public, but by people who knew him as well.
And I
Lots of
wonder, I don't know if this really holds any weight, but you do think often when you see actors who go back and work with the same directors and writers time and time again, you think, well, surely, they must be that's something of a what's the word, an endorsement of someone's character.
Yeah.
That an actor, because if there was any doubt, would they go back and continue to work with the same director or the same,
Yeah, I saw a clip. Obviously, when somebody dies, a lot of old images and footage get sort of resurfaced on social media. People sharing
Mm.
memories, and I saw a clip of, um, sorry, is her name Cheryl Lee or
Oh yeah, Laura Palmer.
yeah, Cheryl
Hmm.
Lee?
Cheryl Lee.
Yeah, there was a clip of her on set of the later series of Twin Peaks,
The reboot.
the
Hmm.
reboot where she was being directed by David Lynch,
Hmm.
and but they were coming together the first time of her in costume again as Laura Palmer, and they were
Right.
in the what's the room, the Black Lodge
The
or
Black Lodge. Yep.
the Black Lodge, and he was so moved and he was like, oh my darling, and whatever his nick, you know how he had nicknames for everyone that he knew,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
whatever her nickname was, he was like, oh, I'm so moved by this, let me look at you. And he kissed her like 4 times on the cheek, and he was like, you look so wonderful. And she was like, oh, I feel a bit nervous, but I'm so happy. And he was like, don't be nervous,
Mm.
whatever way you need to do this, if you need me to give you each line, a line at a time, and then you
Hmm.
want to say it back to me, whatever way you're happy, that's the way we're going to do it. I want you to be happy. This is so magical for me. And it was
Oh.
so moving that that's how he spoke to people. And then
Mm.
I saw a clip of him doing that to another actor who I didn't recognize her, and it was on a completely different film set, and it was outside on the street, and he was saying to her, it gave the appearance of her maybe not being a professional actor, maybe just like a member of the public who was involved in it. And he was
Okay.
saying, I'm going to tell you a line at a time, and that's how we're going to do it. And he was as equally gracious and kind and compassionate to this person as he was with this woman who was a star of his biggest hit,
Right. Okay.
arguably. And like that's the sort of stories you hear coming out about him, and his legacy was just how kind he was.
Mm.
Did you read the statement that Kyle MacLachlan released?
No, I didn't. What did he say?
Just how much he loved him and how they loved
Okay.
each other, and he changed his life. He wouldn't have his career without him, and
Oh.
and then also, um, like everybody who Laura Dern released a statement, and everyone was just saying really similar things. Like this was like a pleasure, one of the greatest pleasures of my life to work with him, and
Oh.
um, it was very sad. And he like it's hard for people who weren't around in the '90s to understand how impactful that show was, Twin
And in an
Peaks.
era where we didn't have the technology that we have today.
Well, we didn't have cable TV. I mean, it existed slightly in the US,
In the
but
US, but
in the
not,
UK and
yeah.
Australia, all around the world, it wasn't a thing, and it was only
Mm.
a really niche thing in the US. And to understand a show as original, unique, quirky, groundbreaking as Twin Peaks was on just normal terrestrial network TV,
Hmm.
absolutely blew everyone's mind. Like,
Yeah.
I remember sitting down to watch it with my household. I lived with Juanita and Andrew in that tiny fibro flat in Woody Point. And
Hmm.
I can remember sitting watching it, being stunned into silence by how amazing that first episode was. Like,
Hmm.
it was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, it was
Yeah.
absolutely groundbreaking. And
Hmm.
then everybody talking about it the next day, even people
Yeah.
who didn't understand it or didn't want to try and understand it, everyone was talking about it. And,
Yeah.
that fever wore off after a while. Like,
Mm.
maybe not everyone watched the whole 2 seasons and it got
Yeah.
cancelled, but
Yeah.
it gripped the world like very, very few other pieces of popular art have. Like it
Yeah.
really, and then it opened the floodgates for other shows. Like every other show that took risks and was a bit different has
Yeah.
Twin Peaks
Yeah.
effect.
Anything that didn't follow the same sort of cookie cutter formula
Yeah,
and just did something a little quirky or a little unusual, to varying degrees of success. But it was all down to Twin Peaks. It
yeah,
just broke the mold, and it did it in such a way that people were upset. I mean, I was obsessed. Me and my friends were obsessed with it.
yeah. And this, I think people refer to it as event TV. And so, the closest thing we have in sort of modern times would be something like Squid Game or
Stranger Things, perhaps.
Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And, but after Twin Peaks, it just shifted the whole, you know, landscape of what it meant to have like TV at that level. Like it was like an art form. It was like somebody made a really impressive art house film that not only was amazing, but also had everyone's attention and was profitable. It was like, the TV version of like Andy Warhol or something, it was just incredible.
Yeah. It was like this incredible director, incredible, like doing it through the medium of television and creating art house television that was lapped up and consumed by, millions of people all over the world.
And so many people who came out of that show have gone on to just be, they were instantly iconic anyway, just from being in the show.
A lot of them were big stars before they were in Twin Peaks as well, the older. And that was another thing that I don't think it maybe serves history well to sort of go back and reinvent things or state things that maybe weren't in his intention at the time. But in an era which lasted for more than a decade after Twin Peaks finished, it was very hard for women, particularly over the age of sort of 40, to get decent roles in TV. And it still is today. It is slowly getting better. But David Lynch had so many actors, so many women actors in his things, not just in Twin Peaks, but in a lot of his films, that he would employ older women actors. And that was unusual at the time. And he did it in such a creative and impactful way as well.
Talking about, some of the iconic people that he had in that show who have gone on to just have legend status. Nobody really got as famous, apart from Kyle MacLachlan. I think Sherilyn Fenn became so instantly famous in that time and became such an icon, especially for younger people. She didn't go on and have the success, long-lasting success.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think the long in terms of longevity, I'd say Laura Dern might be the person who
or Kyle MacLachlan.
Kyle MacLachlan, yeah.
But Sherilyn Fenn in that 1990 to 1993 period was one of the most famous women on the planet, and this is at a time where she was competing with like Madonna or Lady Di or whatever. But I can remember that cover of the Rolling Stone with her, Lara Flynn Boyle, and what's her name,
Mädchen Amick.
How do you say it? Mädchen?
I think it's Mädchen.
Mädchen Amick. That cover, I remember going out and waiting the day that came out in the newsagents and buying that magazine cover and framing the magazine cover because Sherilyn Fenn was so intoxicating and famous and incredible. And a lot of that had to do with she was an incredible actor, is an incredible actor, but also like that role that David Lynch crafted for her and allowed her on the screen to, it was just mesmerizing. But did you know that the original storyline was meant for her and Agent Dale Cooper to be together and for them to flesh that storyline out? But Kyle MacLachlan suggested that the age difference was inappropriate and that he would rather not do it.
Oh, I didn't know that's why they steered away from it.
Also, I've got some facts about Sherilyn Fenn here that I want to discuss with you and see if you knew.
Okay.
Do you know who her famous auntie is?
No, I don't think so.
Suzi Quatro.
Oh, really? No, I
yeah, like Suzi Quatro is a famous rock and roll star who was mega famous in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
Did you know who she dated before she was in Twin Peaks? What famous actor?
No.
Johnny Depp. They dated for about 3.5 years.
Really?
She got a role thanks to him, a cameo in an episode of 21 Jump Street, that teen-focused drama cop show that he was in. And do you know who she dated, even more famous than Johnny Depp, before she dated Johnny Depp in 1985 for about 6 months?
Who?
Just guess.
I mean, how old would she have been in 1980? 85, did you say?
1985.
I don't know. Like, I'm scared, like Warren Beatty.
Prince.
Prince?
Can you
Really?
believe that she dated Prince and then went from Prince
Really?
to Johnny Depp? Like,
Wow.
isn't that wild?
That is wild. That is wild. But I don't know what she does these days. I mean,
Oh,
the last thing I remember her being, well, obviously the Twin Peaks reboot, but she was in the Gilmore Girls, wasn't she?
yeah, and weirdly, she was in the Gilmore Girls on two separate occasions, well, multiple occasions, but two separate story arcs, and she
Hmm.
played different people in both of those.
Oh, really?
So
That's
the
unusual.
creator of Amy, what's her name? Amy Palladino, or what's her name? The
Yeah, yeah.
creator and director or whatever of, not director, well, she probably directed a lot of the episodes, but she loved Sherilyn Fenn so much, like she was an Uber fan,
Hmm.
that she wrote a role for her, and
Mm-hmm.
then she wanted to have her back in again so badly that she created a different character, and she said to the network executives, I don't give a shit,
Wow.
people won't remember, and I love her so much I want her. And
Interesting.
but then when the creator of Gilmore Girls left, and like completely left the show, they she had written Sherilyn Fenn's character to be quite sympathetic, and then the people who took over turned Sherilyn Fenn's character like into sort of a more vindictive route.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
but she wasn't. Sherilyn Fenn was, I think, one of the only people from the TV series that didn't star in Fire Walk with Me, the movie,
Mm. Yeah.
and that's because
Well,
she was busy filming Of Mice and Men.
oh, okay. Okay,
Have you
but
seen that?
no. But also the other person was I'm blanking on her name, but Donna, who played Donna. She was in that Las Vegas show. Well,
Oh, Lara Flynn Boyle.
Lara Flynn Boyle. She
Yeah,
didn't appear. She wasn't in Firewalk with Me either, or the reboot.
and
Um,
the Dawson's Creek. Sherilyn Fenn appeared in Dawson's Creek in an
right.
episode as
Yeah, that's
well,
right. Yeah,
or
I
a couple
remember
of
that.
episodes maybe.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
she had something to do with Pacey or
Yeah, that rings
Joshua
a bell.
Jackson, but
Yeah.
also at other times, just a little bit of trivia, like Dana Ashbrook, who played Bobby,
Bobby.
and
Hmm.
Madchen Amek,
Hmm.
who played
Shelley.
Shelley. They also appeared in the same season of Dawson's Creek, I think.
Oh,
So it must
really?
have been like a
Huh.
little homage
Yeah.
to Twin Peaks to get
Speaking
those actors in.
Speaking of homage to Twin Peaks, do you remember? I can't remember the name of the film, but you and I went to the cinema. I think it was last year. It might have been the year before, and we went to see a film that starred Daisy Ridley,
Yes.
and she was doing a Q&A afterwards. But in that film, there's this scene. What was that film called? Anyway, in that scene in the film, she goes around to this guy's apartment for the first time for dinner or something, and he says, "Do you want to pick some music?" So she goes along the shelf and she picks, and you don't even. I did want to ask the director afterwards, but didn't get the opportunity. But she picks the Firewalk with Me soundtrack from the from the shelf, which always made me chuckle just because of the context it was in the film, her character and everything. But
And the I think the one of my favorite, apart from Sherilyn Fenn, who I was obsessed with,
mhm.
I think the person from Twin Peaks, the original Twin Peaks, who I have most appreciated the art they've done in other places as well, is Grace Zabriskie.
Yes, she is incredible.
So
And what was
she played
what?
Sarah Palmer, right? Like
Yeah,
Laura Palmer's mother.
yeah,
She in that is so phenomenal. But then it's almost like not even her best role. Like she's incredible in that, but then the other
yeah.
stuff she's done. I mean,
Hmm.
some of the stuff, like when you go back as a queer person and look at the stuff that she's done and how much it's
Mm,
impacted your life.
yeah.
Like, I mean, she was
Big
in Big
Big
Love,
Love.
right?
She
I
was
mean,
incredible in that.
but
Incredible.
she was in like Wild at Heart and Inland Empire, other David Lynch stuff. But
Mm,
she was in Fried Green Tomatoes. She
yeah,
was in My Own Private Idaho.
yeah.
She played the crone in 2 episodes of Charmed.
Did she? Oh, I
Yeah,
don't
like do
remember
you
that.
remember her? We watched
Don't remember. I
Charmed
don't remember her
religiously.
being in Charmed. Yeah.
But
Okay.
what I think my favorite role of hers was in Seinfeld, her recurring role in Seinfeld, where she played. You know how George was engaged to Susan, and Susan ends up dying by licking poisonous wedding invitation envelopes
No, I don't
because
remember.
George is so cheap. He buys the cheap envelopes for the wedding, and they
Mm,
ended up being poisonous, and Susan licks them and dies. But
don't remember
it
that at
goes
all.
across a few years, this story arc of him being in this relationship he doesn't want to be in, but he's too like gormless to get out of it. And
Mm.
Susan's parents are played by Grace Zabriskie and Warren Frost. And Warren Frost is Dr. Hayward in Twin Peaks.
Oh right. Okay.
So
Weird.
Grace and Warren play the parents of George's fiance. And it was over a couple of years on Seinfeld, and maybe about 6 episodes. And
Yeah.
she is so hilarious in Seinfeld. She is like absolute scene stealer.
Mm.
And she you know how she has that really like unique way of like snarling at people, like she did it in Big Love and Twin Peaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
She takes it to another level in Seinfeld. It's amazing. Go back and watch
Oh
some of
really?
it, her
Okay.
clips.
I'll go the yeah. I'll do the YouTube. Best of Grace
But
Zabriskie on Seinfeld.
if you want to do a deep dive on Grace Zabriskie, it's like it will take you days because she has been in everything you've ever
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
and has been
And
acting
more.
for like 50 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's incredible.
More. Yeah.
And the other, when I was a teenager, my favorite Twin Peaks person, always apart from Sherilyn, because Sherilyn and playing Audrey Horne was classic. I mean, one of my catchphrases that we used to scream out when we get drunk in the club was, "I'm Audrey Horne and I get what I want." And but one of my other favorites was Billy Zane, who was only in the second season of the first original series.
Audrey Horne's love interest. But do you remember we were sitting in that vegan place in LA?
California
I
vegan.
don't know. Yeah, on Sunset Boulevard, and Billy Zane sat in the booth behind us, and I was losing it. I was like, "Oh my god, it's Billy Zane
Yeah, I was freaking
from Twin
out.
Peaks."
But he was also in Titanic, which I've never seen. But he's been in some bizarrely big things as well. Like, remember they tried to turn him into like a sort of a Hollywood A-lister by having him play the Phantom?
Yeah,
and this was before a lot of big super like Marvel movies and stuff. I don't think it really worked. It wasn't such a big hit. But he was also in that Avril Lavigne music video.
Which one?
Oh my god, it's a song called Rock and Roll.
Okay.
You know that? Do you know that song?
No.
It's classic Avril. It's like one of my favorite songs. And this music video is unhinged. And it's also got the woman who played... Did you ever used to watch The Wonder Years?
Not really, no.
No, that was the teenage love interest of the main character. And that actor plays herself in this music video, and Billy Zane plays some villain. And it is so unhinged. Go and watch it after this.
But okay, I want to go back to Twin Peaks. I don't want to get too far away from Twin Peaks. So I just want to reminisce a little bit because it just defined so many years of my life. When I was at school, we would my friend Ollie and I, and our friend Jane, Ollie and I were at school together, and Jane was in a school just down the road, and we would spend hours just talking about it, and we would write our own scripts for Twin Peaks. We had official books that they released, and we had unofficial books about Twin Peaks. I mean, it was such a different era, such a different time. There was no internet. And I just remember, like, as soon as the episodes finished, we would run to the phone and like call each other, and then, the other one would set times to call each other so that we could all discuss. Because this was before three-way calling; it was before call waiting existed. So it was just this frenzy around it, and it created a whole world, a whole universe, and we just got so lost in it. It was such a form of escapism for us, I suppose. But
and that The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer that was written by Jennifer Lynch,
Yeah, his daughter.
David Lynch's daughter, and she was only 22 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that became such a massive. This is like proof of how big the show was. If you don't understand, we didn't have other ways to consume media back then. Like you couldn't follow someone on TikTok or.
There was no website for it or anything.
So if you wanted something, you'd go and buy a magazine with like Sherilyn Fenn on the cover, or you'd buy the official book that was released. That book was #1 on the New York best. What do you call it? New York Times bestseller list.
And it was The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, aged 33 and something, wasn't it?
No, you're thinking of The Diary of Adrian Mole, 10 and...
No, but wasn't it The Secret... Was it just called The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer?
Diary of Laura Palmer, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
I thought it had like a subtitle or something.
And it was like #1 on this bestseller, like something like 7 weeks or something, or 11 weeks. It was massive, and it sold millions and millions of copies, like unheard of numbers. But then weirdly, Jennifer Lynch is a film director, and she went on to, do you know she made Boxing Helena starring Sherilyn Fenn? Did you see that?
I did, yeah.
It was very strange, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
I mean, it was pretty much a disaster at the box office, but they both say like they're really proud of it and they loved it. But you went to see Twin Peaks Marathon at the Prince Charles Cinema, didn't you?
Yeah.
When was that?
Yeah. Well, it was after the second season, so it would have been mid-90s.
The second season?
Yeah.
You mean
Twin Peaks.
Oh, right. So like 95 or something? Or...
Yeah. So it was every episode back to back. So the Prince Charles Cinema is a small independent cinema just off Leicester Square in Soho, central London, and it does a lot of unusual screenings, art house films, cult films, stuff like that. And they did a 25.5-hour screening of every single episode of Twin Peaks back to back. So it started at midnight on a Friday night, I believe, if IIRC. If I remember correctly. It was at midnight on a Friday night, and we stayed in the cinema. I think we went out for cigarette breaks, and we came out at about 1:00 in the morning on Sunday morning, and we were delirious. We'd stayed awake for the entire time. We were just drinking coffee. We were popping caffeine pills called Pro Plus. I don't know if they still make them. We were... I was hallucinating because everyone in the cinema, it was packed, it was sold out, became so delirious after about 12 hours of watching the same show. And they would, and I think it was a good thing, they would run the full opening credits and ending credits every episode. And so by the time it got to episode, I don't know, 25, we were all just delirious and yelling out. So in the opening credits for Twin Peaks, we would be yelling out the bird, and the mill. And we were just all so, and I think I probably had too much caffeine. At one point I was seeing hallucinating birds flying across the cinema. I mean, it was such an event. It's really annoying actually, because we were in the newspaper at the time, and I had a cutout from the newspaper, and it had a picture, some press photographer had taken a picture inside the cinema, and you couldn't see me, but you could see my friend Jane, and it was all these weird Twin Peaks fans, of which we were a part, and we were just obsessed. And years later, so 2009, I think, I went on my own to visit Snoqualmie in Washington State, where a lot of it was filmed. And that was for me, it was like a pilgrimage, it was a religious experience to go to Twin Peaks.
Amazing. They filmed it up there at the beginning, but then they moved it due to budget constraints, and they then filmed the rest of it on sets in Los Angeles.
What, in the second season, you mean, or
maybe even the second half of the first season? But
because they still had exterior, they must have had some exterior shots.
But most of it was filmed on sound stages then, and they filmed in Malibu Canyon, I think it is.
Oh, really? Okay.
So they got stuff that looked similar, and they did outside shots down there because they they were like, oh yeah, we're not spending this much money, because I think it was quite
Yeah.
an it's a huge ensemble, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, the
Like,
cast was huge and some big names, and yeah, it was.
and I mean, David Lynch wasn't a super famous director then. He'd had that big success with The Elephant Man.
Yeah, and
Um,
Wild at Heart was before Twin Peaks, wasn't it?
was it?
I think
Wasn't it
so.
after it?
I thought it was before, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Until Twin Peaks happened, I didn't have any. He wasn't on my radar.
Oh
I
no,
didn't really
like
know.
I think he'd only really had like very, very well, Wild at Heart came out in 1990, so maybe it was filmed. It came out around the same time as Twin Peaks, but it was probably filmed before, because movies take
Before,
longer,
yeah,
don't they? To
yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I liked the original Twin Peaks. I became obsessed with it. It was such a huge cultural
Mm,
moment and signpost, especially for people our age. Like
hmm
if you were a teenager when that happened, it was very impactful. But for me, the piece of art that um, David Lynch created that had the most impact on me is Mulholland Drive.
mm.
It made
Oh,
me,
you've mentioned it before and on the pod, haven't you?
and I know we were actually talking about David Lynch 2 episodes ago, where this is just before he died.
Mm,
We were talking about the process that people go through of becoming cogs in the Hollywood machinery, and I
yeah.
referenced
And that was
Mulholland Drive.
Last week's episode.
Yeah, but there'll
Yeah.
be another episode.
No,
Won't there be an episode
no,
in
that was
between?
last week's. Yeah, it was
Oh,
last
and
week's.
so it was, honestly, it was about a day. It came out a day or something before he died,
Mm,
and so we were talking about, yeah, how people become cogs in the machinery of Hollywood, and good representations of that in film. And I said, "Oh, Mulholland Drive is a really good
mm.
representation of that." And I also said another representation of that I found interesting was that Louis C.K. show.
Yeah.
And I referenced that scene, not remembering that actually David Lynch was playing the role of the TV executive in
Mm,
that show. And I was like,
yeah.
that's so weird that I mentioned those two David Lynch things and a day later he died. I mean, it's a
Mm,
coincidence. There's nothing
yeah.
more. I'm not trying to suggest I killed David Lynch, but the secret diary of Fat Gay Vegan, I'm going to write about how I really killed.
Who killed David Lynch?
Who killed Laura Palmer?
Well, it was the physical form of her dad, Leland Palmer, but when his body had been inhabited by Bob.
I read, and I don't know how true this is, because when a show becomes as big as Twin Peaks, there's a lot of urban legends. But
Hmm
I read that that character of Bob
hmm
was only introduced by accident, and that he was never meant to be part of the storyline.
Because he was
That
a carpenter, wasn't he? He
Yeah,
was an on-set carpenter.
and he accidentally was seen in a mirror in one of the scenes. He was
Oh,
on
really?
set, and there's photos online where you could see where people said that happened. And I think it might have been Grace Zabriskie, or somebody was screaming or crying, and the shot you could see in the mirror, and you could see this dude who played Bob just standing there, like just staring.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
David Lynch, when he watched The Rush, like the cut of the film that day or that week, he was like, "Oh, I like how that guy's there and it's not explained, because she was in the room on her own." He
Yeah,
goes,
yeah,
and so
yeah.
he had them write this storyline that it was
No
some sort
way.
of demon thing, and that was a mistake. That
And it all
like,
from there
and
came.
that's the whole ending of Twin Peaks.
Wow.
But
And that guy Frank Da Silva, I read someone. I think it was in California. I think he was from California. I read that somebody during the height of Twin Peaks frenzy, somebody hired him for their friend's birthday party to play Bob, and I was, imagine how freaky that would have been, particularly at that in that period in
imagine if at the
history.
Prince Charles at about hour 20 he had walked out or
Yeah,
something.
Frank Da
Hey,
Silva popped up. We would have honestly, we would have lost our shit. And the other thing about Twin Peaks is, do you remember? I don't know, probably 10 years ago. Wait, where are we now? 2025. Yeah, about 10 years ago, I think. There was a Twin Peaks immersive experience pop up in London.
oh
And
yeah.
I went twice. I went once with our friend Lex, and then I went again with our friend Ashley,
Hmm.
who was the Quarry Girl blogger. And I mean, it was so fun to like have this completely immersive Twin Peaks experience. It was a little odd because it was in London and they had all these actors trying to stay in character, and it was a bit strange, but it was incredibly fun. And when I was living in Mexico, probably about 4 years ago. No. How long have I been back in London now? 5 years. So maybe more like 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm.
I remember Ashley sent me in the post a little. I should have brought it. I know exactly where it is. It's in my top drawer. It's a little a key ring thing, and it's the what's it called? The hotel,
Don't know.
the Great Northern Hotel. I couldn't think. I was going to say the Great North, but that was the other. That was like one of those shows that came after Twin Peaks, which borrowed heavily
Well,
from.
isn't the Great North that animated show
Oh,
that
well,
our friend
Alora,
was a writer on?
maybe. But what am I thinking of? What was that? Northern Exposure. That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking of. Northern Exposure was a show that came out in the probably mid late '90s, and it was borrowed heavily from that Twin Peaks vibe.
Do you
But
know
no, it
who?
was the Great Northern Hotel was the hotel above the waterfall that.
Do you know who
Um,
I completely forgot was in Twin Peaks, and I
who?
only remembered when I was reading up on this the other day? Joan Chen.
Yeah, she was a
She was
major character.
She was amazing.
Yeah,
But
Josie
like,
Packer.
there were so many people in that show. It's hard to keep track of
I
who
know.
was in it. But yeah,
You know who else was in it? Who we've mentioned on the podcast a couple of times, but she was really, really young. Was Alicia Witt? She was
yeah.
probably only about 11 or maybe about 11 or 12 when she was Donna's younger sister.
She was
And
also in another David Lynch thing as well. It was something that was like a series of short stories, and she was in. And
yeah,
she,
that rings a bell.
I forget what it was called.
Yeah.
But if we could do like a deep dive on Alicia Witt, like I mean, she was in everything.
Hmm.
Like,
Probably best known for her role on the Sybil Shepherd sitcom Sybil,
well,
right?
it
That
depends.
was
Do you know what? It depends who you are, right? Like, she's
well,
someone
yeah.
that's in so many different types of genres and shows, and like now, young people know her as like this Hallmark movie person. She's in all these like
Is she in a lot
Hallmark.
of Hallmark films?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
If you're into like sort of alternative cinema and stuff, you might know her from David Lynch or John Waters.
Cecil B. Demented,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you're like just like a mainstream TV person and of a certain age, you'll remember her from the Sybil
Mm.
um, sitcom. And
She's also a fairly successful musician, isn't she?
oh, here, look, she was in June in 1984.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
okay,
David Lynch
okay,
movie June.
right.
And then I forget what that other show was though. So she was in a few things. I mean, it
She was
says
in
she
the
was in
reboot.
The Return as well, Twin Peaks
Yeah,
Return, but I
yeah.
can't remember what that was called. Oh, do you remember she was in Four Rooms? That thing that Madonna was
Mm.
in,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
not David Lynch. I'm trying to figure out that. Anyway, I can't.
We'll look it up another time.
Yeah, I can't see what it was.
But
But
there was so many people in Twin Peaks
oh,
that
it was
went on
incredible.
to
But I really love Mulholland Drive. Like I've liked a lot of his stuff. I liked Blue Velvet.
Mm.
Sherilyn had a
Sherilyn was in
small
that.
part in that.
Yeah,
Maybe she was like that character was in a car crash and she was like, "Where's
yeah,
my handbag, my makeup and stuff?"
yeah,
But I like Blue Velvet. But Mulholland Drive to me is one of the best films ever made. Like I
yeah.
think
It
it's
was
a
incredible.
masterpiece. Everything from the acting to the direction to the cinematography to the music. I mean, it
Mm.
is 10 out of 10 amazing.
It
Um,
is. The performances are incredible. There's a scene in Mulholland Drive, when they go to the cinema,
yeah,
um, and it's really quick, but there's a snippet when they go into the cinema. It sort of it pans across, and there's what appears to be Laura Palmer and Ronette Pulaski. They're the character names from Twin Peaks, are sitting in that cinema, and it looks to be the original actors as well. And it's never been confirmed. Like the actors have been asked, and they've been very sort of evasive about whether it was or wasn't them. But I love that, there's a little bit of a Twin Peaks Easter egg in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it even made me love Los Angeles, even though
Yeah.
it's a dark tale of caution and, this like
And power and corruption and
yeah,
everything.
and it's scary and it's mysterious. It made me like just absolute take these feelings of affection I have for Los Angeles into like some sort of hyperdrive. Like I was like, I really want to be around Los Angeles.
Well, he just was so good at creating a universe, wasn't he? He was so good at taking something which could be seen as very run of the mill or very cliche and putting it through a different lens, and with his directing, with his use of cinematography and music as well. I mean, the music in all his projects is phenomenal. And I mean, the music of Twin Peaks, I could do a whole episode about that. Julie Cruz and those songs and Angelo Badalamenti, they just created this musical soundtrack. And not only the music as well, but just, his incredible use of natural elements like the wind in his directing as well. Like it just was it was such a universe that you could get lost in, and he did exactly the same with Mulholland Drive. The mystique and intrigue that he creates in every scene is so groundbreaking. I just
mean, even Chapel Rowan referenced Mulholland Drive in
like
in
that
one of her
sex
songs.
scene that's in Mulholland Drive. Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
That shows you like how far-reaching that is. I mean, that album came out last year, and Mulholland Drive came out in 2001, I think.
I wouldn't. Yeah,
and so that's like over 20 years, and the person who wrote that line is, very young.
Well, so, she wouldn't have been alive probably when
that film
when Mulholland Drive came out. Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, David Lynch will leave such an immense legacy for future generations. But yeah, it was a sad day. I did was it you that sent me that thing about that his family said, join us to remember our father, please join us in a worldwide moment of transcendental meditation. So I created a WhatsApp group with my friends from school, Ollie and Jane.
Yeah,
and we all said we were going to meditate at the same time.
He was like a big proponent of transcendental meditation,
and he incorporated that into Agent Cooper's character a bit in Twin Peaks as well.
Yeah,
and it was that. I mean, now we talk about meditation so freely, like it's just everyone knows what it is. But in the 90s, in Western, if you like, cultures, meditation was not exactly well known. So it was a very unusual concept for it to be thrown into the conversation. But yeah.
Okay, well, we need to wrap up because
we've got to go and watch Mulholland Drive.
If we could talk about, like, I mean, there are so many tangents when you talk about David Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we haven't even talked about Eraserhead, or I mean, there's so much, but anyway,
or the film Fire Walk with Me. Anyway, yeah, we could save that for future episodes, perhaps. So, anyway, let's wrap up. What else do we need to tell people? Subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify. Yeah, please subscribe.
It would be really nice to get some more YouTube channel subscribers. So if you could just even do it as a favor to us, if you like a pity subscription.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if you don't watch it, just subscribe. In the meantime, you can find me and what I'm up to on my Instagram, mostly at Josh and the Jumpstarts, or if you go to joshandthejumpstarts.com, you'll find me there, where you can stream my latest EP. What about you, Sean?
You can follow me on Instagram at FatGayVegan, and I'm around on some other platforms as well, but mostly I post on Instagram. And come to some events if you're in London. And that's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, until then, don't forget that the owls are not what they seem.
And don't forget that I'm Audrey Horn and I get what I want.
Okay. We'll see you in your feeds this time next week.
All right. Watch out for teeth migration.
Bye.
Bye.